Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We're going to allow 5 minutes before we start the meeting tonight. Thank you.
All right, good evening and welcome everyone to the county's Unsafe Camping Community Meeting. I am Judy Ying, the Acting Chief Operations Officer of the Finance and General Government Group, and have the honor of facilitating tonight's session. Tonight's meeting is also being offered in Spanish via our wonderful interpreters. I will now turn it over to them to explain how to access the Spanish channel in Zoom.
Muy buenas noches. Voy a ser la intérprete del día de hoy. Si requieren acceso a los servicios de interpretación, favor de seleccionar el icono en forma de globo en la barra de herramientas de Zoom. Ahí podrá elegir su idioma preferido. Gracias.
All right, for all participants, please note that even if you do not need interpretation services, you must still choose English as your language to hear that audio. So please check the bottom toolbar for the interpretation option and select your language. And if we could go to the next slide. Also, this meeting is being recorded, and the meeting recording will be made available on the Unsafe Camping engagement page. With that, I want to take a moment to thank you all for taking time from your schedules to join us this evening and provide your thoughts on the information that is shared. For tonight's session, we have assembled a group of subject matter experts from across the county to provide information about this important topic. After the presentation, we will answer questions submitted through the Q&A function located on the bottom toolbar. However, you don't have to wait to submit your questions. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation, and we will try to get to as many as possible. Throughout this evening, we will collect feedback through the Zoom polling feature, which will appear as a pop-up on your screen. You can also visit the Engaged SD website linked in the chat to provide your feedback. I'd now like to turn it over to Quentin Brooks with the Finance and General Government Group to provide an overview of tonight's session. Quentin?
Thank you, Judy. The purpose of tonight's community meeting is to provide the public an opportunity to learn about the Unsafe Camping Ordinance and provide input on additional options that are being considered by the County of San Diego Board of Supervisors. Here is the agenda for this evening's session. We will start with a timeline of events of how we arrived here tonight, along with some important background items, followed by presentations that discuss current practices and resources, along with the presentation of additional options that are being considered. After the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. Before we get started with tonight's presentation, we are interested to hear from you on what considerations are important to you when it comes to an unsafe camping ordinance. We will be launching a poll that will pop up on your screen that will allow you to choose on what you feel is the highest priority. As a reminder, in case you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can always submit your feedback on our Engage San Diego page, which we will also share in the Q&A section in the chat. If you can take a minute and answer the poll question, we will leave this poll question up for a minute and a half. We have about 30 seconds left. We will now close the poll. Thank you for submitting your responses. Based upon the responses that we received tonight, it looks like the community shared that the highest priority should be focused on provision of shelter, along with outreach and engagement. With this information will also be shared at the close of the meeting or Engage San Diego page. On this slide, you will see a timeline of events starting from left when the Board of Supervisors first directed county staff to develop an unsafe camping ordinance to address fire risk and unauthorized campments in the unincorporated areas and on county property. From there, an enterprise-wide working group was formed to address the requests given by direction of the Board of Supervisors. Throughout the early months of 2024, this working group conducted internal stakeholder review to ensure key elements were captured in draft options for the Unsafe Camping Ordinance. On June 28, 2024, the United States Supreme Court provided its ruling on the City of Grants Pass versus Johnson case, which we will discuss in more detail on the next slide. This brings us to where we currently are with this evening's community information session, along with the survey that was published on the San Diego County engagement page. Our next steps will be to return to the Board of Supervisors on October 22nd, sharing the feedback received from the community, along with the options that will be presented later in this presentation. As mentioned earlier, the county received direction from the Board of Supervisors to bring forward an unsafe camping ordinance that addresses unsafe camping in the unincorporated area and on county properties with the purpose of mitigating fire risk, safeguarding public health and safety through additional protections for open spaces, preserves, public works infrastructure, and county parks. It is important to highlight that the county does have an existing camping ban located in the County Regulatory Code Section 73.108. More details about the existing ordinance will be shared on the next slide. The county has not been actively enforcing the existing ordinance. This is because prior to the Supreme Court's ruling in Grants Pass, shelter had to be provided to an individual before a camping ban could be enforced, and the existing ordinance does not have this requirement. However, the Supreme Court recently ruled in Grants Pass that local camping ordinance could be enforced regardless if shelter is made available. This makes the county's existing ordinance enforceable again, and therefore one of the Board of Supervisors' options is to keep the existing ordinance as is. I now like to turn it over to Jason Himmons with Land Use Environment Group.
Thanks. As Quentin mentioned, the county has existing ordinance that can now be enforced. County Regulatory Code already states that no person shall camp in any public park, street, or highway, or on property owned or leased by the county for temporary living accommodations. Under this ordinance, camping is defined as the use of any public park, any public street or highway, or improved or unimproved property owned or leased by the county for temporary living accommodations. This ordinance is strictly for unauthorized camping and does not impact people that have a permit to camp at a county-operated campground. Next slide. Now I'm going to cover the county's current procedures for addressing people experiencing homelessness in the unincorporated areas. That includes advance notification, site assessment teams, and notification procedures. When possible, the county assesses a site to determine if an unsheltered encampment poses an imminent threat to life, health, safety, or infrastructure, and determines whether emergency situations require immediate removal of the Can you hear me?
Yes, it sounds like you're back now.
Okay. Site assessment teams that consist of Health and Human Services Agency, Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and Sheriff's Office Homeless Assistance Resource Team, or HART, provide outreach to people experiencing homelessness. The site assessment teams offer a range of resources such as access to self-sufficiency programs, food, housing, job assistance programs, vaccinations and harm reduction kits, access to behavioral health services, and connections to community partner services and resources. Notification procedures include posting a notice to vacate at the site of the encampment 72 hours prior to clearing, collecting, labeling, and storing of personal property for 90 days, and providing information for individuals to retrieve personal property. Advanced notification, site assessment teams, and notification procedures will continue. Any new ordinance options would be additional tools for the county. Now I'm turning it back over to Quentin to discuss the options the county is considering for unsafe camping ordinance.
Thank you, Jason. This slide provides the options the Board of Supervisors is considering for the unsafe camping ordinance. Following this slide, details will be shared about each option. The 4 options are address fire risk, provide shelter before citing someone for unauthorized camping, consider exceptions from shelter requirement and additional protections for public infrastructure, include the county's procedures for clearing encampments in the ordinance. I now like to turn it over to Ryan Silva from CAL FIRE.
Thank you, Quentin. More than 80% of the county's unincorporated area qualifies as high or very high fire risk, as designated by the state of California. Because the county is responsible for parks and roads, along with owning or leasing properties throughout the unincorporated area, any actions taken to reduce the potential for a fire to be ignited makes our community safer and protects the most vulnerable residents. Among the options for the board's future consideration is to prohibit making or maintaining fires in the unincorporated communities, along with prohibiting ignition sources from a fire perspective that lends support to the robust prevention and community education work we do in the San Diego County Fire Protection District. In the unincorporated area's state responsibility area, where CAL FIRE has the legal responsibility to prevent and fight wildfires, our state-funded staff workers diligently with local fire protection districts to prevent and mitigate fires from even starting, and that includes aligning our actions to the Public Resource Code and Health and Safety Codes. The best way to fight a wildfire is to prevent one from beginning. With that, I will now turn it over to Matthew Brown with the Health and Human Services Agency.
Thank you, Ryan. As mentioned earlier, one of the options the Board of Supervisors will be considering is the requirement of shelter to enforce the unsafe camping ban. This slide will provide background on current housing options. Per the most recent 2024 point-in-time count, it was identified that there were approximately 200 persons experiencing homelessness in the unincorporated region. The Board of Supervisors has taken multiple actions to address shelter and service needs over the past several years, including the approval of compassionate emergency housing solutions and pathways to housing projects to establish shelter capacity for the unincorporated communities. Current emergency housing options for the unincorporated communities include the Regional Homeless Assistance Program, or RHAP, and 2 safe parking sites. RHAP is currently the primary emergency housing program for the unincorporated communities. RHAP's current sheltering capacity is 250 households on any given night. This program uses local hotels and motels as emergency housing and provides wraparound services, including weekly case management and housing navigation to permanent housing. 2 safe parking programs provide 44 safe spaces for those experiencing homelessness in their vehicles, in addition to case management and housing navigation to more stable housing options. In addition to these options, the board approved the design, development, and construction of the Troy Street Sleeping Cabins project. This project will add an additional option for people experiencing homelessness in unincorporated communities. I will now turn it over to Lauren Moreno with the Land Use and Environmental Group.
Thank you, Matt. Another ordinance option includes an exemption to a requirement to offer shelter for people experiencing homelessness before unsafe camping sections can be enforced. In that case, the ordinance would be able to be enforced without a shelter requirement at certain areas and facilities. These areas are environmentally sensitive, necessary for critical operations, or restricted due to safety concerns. The identified areas and facilities are open space and preserves, county-maintained culverts and channels, county airports, wastewater treatment facilities, inactive landfills and road stations, and county parks. At these areas, anyone engaged in camping, making or maintaining fire, activities like digging or interfering with the function of the facility, and storage of personal property may be immediately cited or removed. Another unsafe camping ordinance option will detail the county's existing procedures for clearing encampments, including the county's advance notification process. Currently, the county posts a notice at least 72 hours in advance of cleanup to let people living in an encampment area know when they need to move their belongings. The county's process for managing personal property recovered at a county cleanup will also be included. The ordinance will outline what types of items the county collects. These are items that are useful to a person and are not hazardous, such as photographs, documents, clothing, tents, and bikes. And the time period for storage, 90 days. I will now turn it back to Judy Ying.
Thank you, Lauren. We would now like to open our poll for our second question. As mentioned earlier, the poll will pop up on your screen to allow you to answer the question. As a reminder, if you're having technical difficulties, you can always submit your feedback on our Engage SD page, and we will share the link in the chat. After the meeting, you're able to submit feedback using the channels shown on the screen, which will be open to the public until September 30th, 2024 at 5 p.m. You can also submit any questions or comments through the Q&A chat option in Zoom right now. We will continue to answer questions received from the Q&A option in tonight's meeting, and we will respond to all questions in the after meeting summary and post on the engagement website. Thank you for your responses in our second poll question. It looks like we have a fairly even split among how the community wishes for the county to communicate with the public and understand the camping ordinance. So we will definitely consider that feedback in our planning. So at this time, I would like to open it to the question and answer portion of the evening. Our first question is, with shelters closing, what are the plans when there's an increasing amount of unhoused and not enough housing and shelter? And for this question, I will turn it over to our staff with Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities.
Judy, as mentioned, the county runs the RHAP program, which has 250 bed capacity nightly, and 2 safe parking programs, which have 44 spaces. In addition to that, our staff work with individuals to connect to other resources, such as our encampment resolution funds, family reunification programs, and community resources that are available region-wide. Thank you, Judy.
Thanks, Matt. And for the second part of that question, that was, when it comes to management of personal property, what is the protocol now and how will it be handled moving forward? And for this question, I will turn it over to Lauren Moreno from Public Works.
Hi, for the second part of that question regarding personal property, there will be no change from the current procedures that we utilize today. During cleanups, we post the cleanup site with information on how to retrieve personal property that has been recovered from the site, and we store that property for 90 days.
Thanks, Lauren. So for our next question, okay, so we do have a question. Is there a timing component incorporated into your plan between the time an encampment is reported and action is taken? And for that question, is there a member from our public safety group that could respond? Okay. So,
Hi, this is Deputy Cummings with the Sheriff's Department. I can kind of answer that question. So today we got a complaint of a camp and we were notified of it, and we went out there within the same day and offered resources. So it's based off our availability. If it's in our time frame, we will go out the same day. If not, we'll go within the week though.
thank you very much. Okay, so we have some questions related to shared housing. So the questions are, why isn't shared housing attached to shelters? And how can shared housing providers receive subsidies for those that are housing ready? And do you think a housing navigator should work in tandem with outreach? And for that question, I'll turn it over to Matt Brown with Health and Human Services Agency to provide some context.
Thanks, Judy. In general, shared housing is a client choice, and it is a good one in a challenging housing market. That is certainly something we try to assist with. Our Housing and Community Development Services has recently sponsored an effort for senior housing matching program. And this is a way that individuals on a fixed income can be matched and then have shared housing opportunities given to them. It is also a partnership with landlords and clients and service providers. As for having a housing navigator joining outreach, housing navigators generally specialize in permanent housing placements, and at the point of outreach, that's usually not the first intervention that we will be trying to access. We would probably go to temporary housing first. Thanks, Judy.
Thanks. And don't go away quite yet, because our next question is, with some smaller cities outside of the city of San Diego pursuing and adopting anti-camping bans, what can the county do to support them in building shelter rather than going the route of criminalization?
So in the last couple of years, the county board of supervisors authorized a capital projects program that essentially made $10 million available region-wide for jurisdictions to apply, and the goal being that the money would be used to boost the local shelter capacity region-wide. In addition to that, the County of San Diego joins with different outreach teams across the region, including every law enforcement agency, service providers, and community-based organizations, including our partners at Caltrans and the California Highway Patrol. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you very much. For our next question, the question is there an ability to immediately prohibit camping and remove encampments within a certain radius of places like residences and schools, etc.? And for that question, we will turn it over to our representative from Public Safety Group.
Hi, Deputy Cross here again. So currently we are doing a resource first approach. So we're not going to be doing enforcement. I know San Diego PD does have that. So we are working in that direction. But for HEART, the homeless resource team, we're going to be compassionate and patient with the individuals that we work with and continue to just offer resources first.
So if you don't mind staying on, our next question is, what is the procedure for handling those who refuse services or referrals?
So currently we continue to outreach to them. We don't think that you can say no enough. We will talk to them 100 times and hope that on that 101st time, they'll finally accept the resources. We do offer everything that we can and work with multiple outreach teams. If they're a veteran, we try to get them housed through there. If they need rehab, we try to go that direction. Whatever best suits them is what we try to offer. But ultimately, we will continue to outreach and just do what we can to help them, no matter how many times they try to turn us down.
Thank you. Appreciate the response. For our next question about safe parking programs, the question is, what are the plans for safe parking programs in our unincorporated communities? And for that one, I'll turn it to Matt Brown with Health and Human Services Agency.
Thanks, Judy. As I mentioned, we have 2 safe parking programs. One of them is in unincorporated El Cajon, and the other is in Spring Valley. And together they have a capacity of 44 safe parking spaces any given night. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you very much. And for our next question, I will turn it over to our Public Works Department. The question is, how does this ordinance account for encampments that receive a 72-hour notice but simply move locations?
Hi, we would simply continue to engage and follow our existing procedures.
Thank you very much. You're just looking for our next questions. Give it a few minutes. Okay, looks like we have another question coming in, and that is directed towards our Health and Human Services team. The question is, how many homeless families with children are there in the county? And how many homeless individuals?
Thanks, Judy. I will look into that and reply in a couple minutes.
Okay, while we're looking into that one, there's a question for our Parks and Recs team. Are there any considerations for making transient habitation campground permits easier to obtain? They currently require an expensive and time-consuming major use permit. Or how about a small campground permit for, say, 5 or 10 sites?
Sorry, Judy, you cut out for part of that. I'm having some mic problems. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, absolutely. So the question is, are there any considerations for making transient habitation or campground permits easier to obtain? They currently require an expensive and time-consuming major use permit. How about a small campground permit for, say, 5 or 10 sites?
Yeah, we don't have a specific permit that's for unsheltered versus sheltered individuals, we have our standard camping permit that applies to all individuals. It allows for stays in our campground facilities up to 14 days with a time out period, and then allows for 60 stays throughout the course of the year for any of our camper vehicles. And there's no major use permit tied specifically to that, but if there's follow-up questions, I can follow up with the constituent who asked those afterwards as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the response. We're now going to shift gears to our public safety group. The next question for the public safety group is the direction to now move away completely from arresting the offenders?
So no, that would be left to the patrol level who does the enforcement action. HART, again, is just a resource first approach. So if we do go that route at some point, we've talked about it, but it's not happening right now. We could add additional deputies to the HART team as a backup for specific enforcement that currently is not in place. And HART itself is a resource first approach. So if enforcement does need to be done, that would be through the patrol level at whichever station that area is under.
Thank you. And on a very related question, the question is, will the county immediately enforce the law per Governor Newsom's executive order and the Supreme Court's grants pass ruling?
So again, not the HART team. The HART team will be focusing on resources first.
Thank you much. So this next question is a general question that I think I can answer. The question is, all of the other major jurisdictions in San Diego County, such as City of San Diego, Chula Vista, and Santee, have all passed unsafe camping ordinances. Why aren't we doing the same for the unincorporated? And I think that's a very good question, and it's the reason why we're here tonight. So we do have direction from the Board of Supervisors to provide options so that they can deliberate on an unsafe camping ordinance for the county of San Diego and the unincorporated areas. So that will be going to the board for consideration on October 22nd, if you're interested in participating in that meeting. And once we get direction from the board, we'll proceed as directed on that. And then, so this next question is for Health and Human Services Agency. The question is, why are these emergency housing options only being proposed in Spring Valley and El Cajon?
Thank you, Judy. Those are in reference to the safe parking programs, and those are already in operation. They are not at the proposal phase. Thank you.
All right, so the next question is for our public safety group. The question is, what percentage of law enforcement encounters are currently made by the HART team, given that they focus on resources rather than enforcement?
So 100% of my contacts are for HART. I'm specifically assigned to the homeless outreach team. So I go out with all the social workers, HHSA, Homestar, all of our partners. I go out specifically to homeless encampments to offer resources. So 100% of my contacts are through HART. But at the patrol levels, they're the ones who respond to 911 calls, complaint calls, anything at a station level, enforceable, they would respond to that. Anything homeless related, I respond to in the unincorporated areas of San Diego County.
Thank you very much. We have an earlier question for our Health and Human Services team. The question was, how many cities applied for the 10 million funding and how much was granted?
Thank you, Judy. I'll take the first part. For the $10 million Capital Emergency Housing Solutions Grant Program, there were various projects that were applied for and funded, including in the cities of Escondido, Chula Vista, Carlsbad, and several different projects in the city of San Diego. What this translated to was adding 439 shelter beds and 85 safe parking spots region-wide. And all of the funds, all of the $10 million funds were awarded. Thanks, Judy.
I think the next question is also for Health and Human Services Agency. The question is, are people in the safe parking program accounted for as sheltered?
Thank you for that question. Safe parking itself is counted as unsheltered.
Thank you very much. Great. We'll take a moment to see if there's any more questions that come in. All right, for Health and Human Services Agency, we got a question. The question is, how successful have the 2 safe parking sites been? And are there plans to expand these sites or increase capacity?
Thank you for the question. These sites are successful. They provide alternative sheltering options for the communities. As far as plans, we are always looking for plans, but these kind of projects will be board authorized and funded.
Right. We'll give it a few more minutes for any additional questions that come in. And as Quentin, I mentioned before, we will be posting a question and answer document to the Engage San Diego website. So just in case there's anything that we missed or you didn't quite catch a answer to a question tonight, we will post those online. All right. So for this next one, okay. All right, so it looks like our questions are winding down or slowing down for the evening. We'll stay on for another 5 more minutes in case there are any additional questions. And again, just want to reiterate, in case we didn't get to your question or we accidentally missed it, we will be posting question and answers online on our Engage San Diego site in the next few days. So make sure to check back at that site. This is also a good time if you haven't provided your feedback on our Engage San Diego website, go ahead and go to the link or use the QR code on the screen, and you can provide your feedback through the form on our webpage. Oh, we do have one more question. This one's for Health and Human Services Agency. The question is, Does the county have a plan to solve or address homelessness?
Thank you, Judy. Yes, the county has a plan. The county in November of 2021 adopted the framework for ending homelessness. And inside of that, this is an enterprise-wide, not just agency-wide. This is an enterprise-wide framework. And inside of that, there are over 80 programs countywide that work to end homelessness.
Thank you very much. For this next question, I'll turn it over to our land use group, specifically Public Works. The question is the Board of Supervisors considering any stricter enforcement policies as part of this ordinance, such as banning or sleeping near sensitive zones, shortening notification window from 72 hours, or anything like that?
There are several options on the table, as you've seen tonight with this presentation, and we are aware of the governor's executive order. Potentially, we could look at an option to reduce the 72-hour window. We haven't decided that yet. And Judy, I lost the question. What was the second part of that question?
Yeah, so the question was, let me repeat the question. So the question is the Board of Supervisors considering any stricter enforcement policies as part of this ordinance, such as banning sleeping near sensitive zones or shortening the notification window from 72 hours or anything else like that?
Right, and so that the first part of the question was talking about any sensitive zones, and the ordinance options are considering sensitive zones. Those are county parks, our public works facilities, culverts and drainages, open space preserves, and some various other facilities that provide critical infrastructure. So that is definitely a part of one of the ordinance options.
Thank you very much. This next question is for our Health and Human Services Agency team. The question is, does the county plan to incorporate the Regional Task Force for the Homeless and individual city plans?
The framework for ending homelessness that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors is region-wide, yes. And we collaborate with all of the jurisdictions on their homeless and housing goals, as well as the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, another question for Health and Human Services Agency. The question is, how successful have the 2 safe parking sites been? And are there plans to expand these sites or increase capacity?
Thank you, Judy. The site in Spring Valley just recently opened, but I will cover the one that we opened first, which is in unincorporated El Cajon. And it's been very successful since the program first opened. 43% of program participants have been exited into more stable housing placements. As for the specific sites being expanded themselves, no, there's no plans for that. They are kind of on fixed spaces. But as I mentioned before, we are always looking for the board's authority to look at new projects.
Thank you very much. And we're going to give it another few minutes for some additional questions to come in. Okay. Looks like we do have a question for our land use team. The question was, how does this ordinance account for encampments that receive a 72-hour notice, but simply move locations?
We continue to follow.
We continue to engage with people in the encampment areas. We are constantly assessing and monitoring the unincorporated county for encampments, and we follow our current procedures, which are to assess the area, provide notification, outreach, schedule the cleanup, and remove that personal property. And so that's what we would continue to do in those cases.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the response. All right, does look like the questions are slowing down that are coming in. So again, just want to reiterate, we did accidentally miss your question tonight, or there's a response that you didn't quite catch. One, the recording of tonight's meeting will be posted, as well as a question and answer sheet to the Engage San Diego page, to the link that you see on the screen right now. And you can also use the QR code that's on the screen right now to go ahead and visit the website and use the feedback form to provide any additional comments or feedback that you have for us. All right, everyone. So seeing as the questions have slowed down, we'll go ahead and close out tonight. So here at the county, we value and center our work on community engagement. And for that reason, on behalf of the entire county team, I would like to thank you for your participation this evening. Thank you again, and have a wonderful night.